there's this big element of how creative can you be as a marketer, and you have so many different platforms and media channels to do that these days. And then you have the other end of the spectrum, which is how analytical can you be as a marketer.
What separates a good marketer from a truly great one? Is it a great marketer's ability to expertly balance their creative and analytical mind, or is it more than that? Welcome to the DesignRush podcast. I'm your host, Vianca Mayer. Today I chat with Dr. Stephanie Gutnik, Global Chief Strategy Officer at Billups, about what sets great marketers apart from the rest.
And just to remind marketers that it's about the consumer. It's all about how media and advertising makes people feel. There's such a complex process into how people will respond to an ad.
We'll talk about consumer psychology and the emotional impact of ads. In 2024, 64% of Gen Z and 58% of millennials found products in social media, showing the need for emotionally resonant campaigns.
A great marketer is going to be keeping top of mind in everything that they do, because how people feel about the medium that is being used to convey the message they're exposed to, that has an effect on the actual ad itself and how people feel about the ad.
Stephanie will share tips on team communication. With 48% of content marketers focusing on new technologies, continuous learning and collaboration are essential.
Having the confidence to focus on your strategy and your plan is really important here, because things do change every day and new tech will be available every day. The number of companies that are out there that are offering to solve your problems, that's going to evolve every day. So if you get distracted by all these different choices and think that every new thing is something that you need to adapt to, that at the end of the day, you probably won't have much to show for it.
Remember to like and subscribe to keep up with all of our future conversations with industry leaders. Let's get started. Stephanie, a very warm welcome to the DesignRush podcast again. It was so nice chatting with you a little bit before we got started now. But yeah, welcome. It's wonderful having you.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Amazing. Okay, so Stephanie, I want to start our conversation today by getting to know you a little bit better. Okay, so I know that I've found a lot of your professional achievements, which there are many really great ones, of course, that we'll get into. But I haven't been able to really find a lot about who you are as a person, where you come from, what really shaped you to where you are today. Now, Stephanie, I know that you grew up in Toronto, Canada, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
I grew up in Winnipeg, but I live in Toronto.
Okay, amazing. So I wonder, what was it like for you growing up in Winnipeg? And, what was your childhood like there and stuff like that?
Well, Winnipeg, Manitoba is actually Winnie the Pooh was named after in Winnipeg, but it's the prairies of Canada. So life was it was wonderful. I have a very close family, and my parents encouraged my sister and I to just be curious and play and have an imagination. And that definitely did have a big impact on who I am today. My mom tells stories about how from a very young age, I would bring a bunch of books to her and just sit on her lap and have her read to me forever. And that is definitely a trend that continued on. So there was a big emphasis, at least for me, on reading and writing and being creative.
Okay, amazing. Do you think that those sort of early experiences really shaped you into, becoming the marketer and person that's so interested or passionate about technology today?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, some people will say, follow your passion, and others I've heard say, follow your skill set. And so it was pretty clear, again, from a young age, and it was nurtured by my family and by, I had great teachers at school growing up. So my passion and my skills for reading and writing were developed quite intensively. I had a grade 4 teacher who introduced me to poetry and really pushed me to see that whole world in a different way, and it stuck. By middle school, I was writing for the Winnipeg Free Press. So they had a section called Extra, and I was doing things like reviewing a Michael Bublé concert when he came to Winnipeg. So um, just having that passion be nurtured throughout my time growing up in Winnipeg. When I went to McGill, so I did my undergrad at McGill University, I studied political science and communications, and I was dead set on becoming a broadcast journalist. So that all went together. I did an internship at CTV Montreal, and these were all pieces of me understanding, okay, how does my passion and skill set bring me to a job that I get fulfillment from in the real world, if you will. And so the broadcast journalism wasn't 100% for me at that time, but it did bring me into ad sales. That was my first job out of school. And I worked for News Corp, and it was a really great way to understand sales training, because there's sales in everything that you do. You don't have to be a salesperson to know that you need to have that sales acumen. And also processes. News Corp is a very big company, so I became privy to processes involved in a big organization from a young age. But when I was there, that's when I was working with marketing agencies, and that's when I realized, oh, okay, I think that's my fit.
If you think about your progression from when you were a kid to where you are now, it seems like it was a really natural sort of progression for you, how you did different things, and it kind of led to where you are in this moment.
Yeah, and also, we change as people as we have different experiences, and that's why some career paths kind of have to be linear, just by nature of learning what you're doing and then practicing it. But in this case, at least for me, it's the more experiences I've had, the more fun and enjoyment I get out of what I'm doing. I mean, isn't that the thing where some jobs need to have a linear progression? That's just part of what you do in your practice. And then others, at least in my case, the more that I've done, the more fun I have in what I'm doing. And I really believe that hard work constitutes a lot of success that is seen by people in the workforce. However, we have to be open to these moments of serendipity where you get that momentum from doing your job well and taking it seriously, and then suddenly an opportunity comes your way that you might not have anticipated, and it just propels you in a direction. And so I'm always a fan of just grab those, right? So from News Corp, I went to a company called Broadsign, and I took a job as a copywriter. I knew that I was like, I can get paid to write. This is wonderful. And it turns out that Broadsign, it's an out-of-home software company. And that's how I was introduced to technology. So again, going back to when I was young, I always loved puzzles. Like from the time I was in nursery school and kindergarten, I was always doing puzzles. So there is this logical element in my brain too that wants to put things together and figure out the bigger picture from just pieces of information. So from just copywriting, I was then able to get exposure at a company that was quickly growing across the world to business development, strategy, and I ended up running the marketing department and then starting and running business development. Something that is called programmatic came along, and because I was the only one who kind of had that ad sales like agency experience, that fell into my lap. And actually, I raised my hand. Hey, I think I can do this. There's a difference there too, just putting yourself out there. It's not always going to fall into your lap. You've got to ask for it and have that confidence. So it's just in that one company, you can kind of understand just all of the different experiences and skills that were picked up. And that was also very helpful in moving on to the next stage. But tech is not something like, I was not the kind of person, people will talk about how they took apart their toaster oven and then put it back together. Like that was not me. My sister and I used to play The Sims, and we found a hack to get us more money, but like that's it, right? So there was a very strong learning curve at this company called Broadsign in terms of software and hardware we were selling at one point, programmatic. And I just some things I can laugh at in hindsight because, you make those mistakes that are very humorous when you're picking this up.
Yeah.
But now I feel so confident talking about how data works, what constitutes a tech stack, everything involved in tech. And that's just, it's a message to everybody out there that you don't have to be born thinking like an engineer. You can learn tech. And I think that should make people feel very confident about their options.
Exactly. I think the other thing is that a lot of people, do you know what I said to my mom the other day, right? I was on computers, like I used to chase my older brothers off of the computer when I was like 2 years old to just fiddle around with it. A computer since I was a toddler. And it's just been my life. I've loved it. But do you know the issue that I found was that no one ever told me as like a young girl, like you could be a developer or a programmer one
Mm.
day, or you could do this or build computers and stuff. No one ever told me that. It's maybe different now, but I definitely felt like that wasn't a thing. And now that I'm older and I'm in this industry, I've actually realized that you can be in tech without knowing how to build a computer from scratch, right? Like you can definitely be in this industry and really tackle it and know what the hell you're talking about at the end of the day, regardless of whether you grew up that way. I just wish that I had known all of that sooner.
But look where you are now, right? And now you can advocate for other people who are at the stage where they're making decisions about what they want to do.
Exactly. And also, I think that the world is a lot different than when we were younger. And also, I just wanted to say thank you for shouting out Sims because I love that game. I actually, well, I haven't played it in a while, but I used to play it quite a lot as well. I think it shaped us creatives. One thing that I do want to go back to quickly, Stephanie, is that you said that you started out as a copywriter. And I really want to highlight this because it's interesting to me. I also started out as a copywriter in this industry, and I actually know so many of our peers did that. And I almost feel like starting out as a copywriter in this industry and then progressing over to like maybe social media marketing and learning a little bit of that and like, becoming like a content manager. I feel like there's like sort of a progression. And I find it interesting that it's almost like starting as like the janitor in a company and working your way up because you're like learning the ins and outs like from the bottom up. Because if you think about marketing at its core, it's content and copy, and it always has been. And I think if you can start with that base, where you go from there is really, there's so many avenues that open up for you, and definitely grabbing those opportunities is incredible. I think it's definitely, I mean, the things that have been thrown my way that I've said yes to, for instance, like even with this podcast, it's amazing. It's amazing where this industry can take you if you just walk in from the front, which in my opinion is copywriting for sure.
It is such a good point that you raise, and for a couple of different reasons too. One is growing up, a big value that was instilled by my parents was respect. Nothing is below you, pay your dues, that kind of thing. And working hard for your own gratitude and knowing that you gave it your best shot as opposed to like working hard to win. So to take that to your example about starting off as a copywriter, copywriters have to ask questions from everyone across the company because you are covering so many different departments' needs, and there's an element of internal comms and external comms. So being curious, it's a great position to allow you to learn about what goes on across everything that you're doing. And then you can enter, you're learning so much anyways. You can enter, you could be a copywriter and then become a project manager or go into product. It's just, those avenues are yours for the taking. And that's when it comes to putting yourself out there and knowing at what point it's like, okay, maybe it makes me a little bit nervous, but let me try something new, right? And then I also believe too, it goes back to just being able to communicate, which is, as you talk about the world today, we now have communications with emojis even, and just being able to communicate your own needs and career path desires, that's important. And also just to make sure that, again, for anybody who's starting out, I used to do a panel when I was after I'd graduated McGill, I'd go back because I ended up in business, but I did a Bachelor of Arts. It was called Work Your BA. And that was one of the biggest things I said, is the ability to synthesize information and clearly communicate, whether it's challenges and potential solutions or whatever it might be. That'll take you far regardless of your role.
Exactly. And also, just on that note, I've often found as well that a lot of people go study something and they end up doing like basically the complete opposite. For instance, I studied project management, and I mean, it's really helped me. I have to say that it's helped me working with people and organizing things, and all of that has really helped me in this industry for sure. But I couldn't imagine myself being a project manager at the moment. Really, I couldn't. Anyway, but on the topic of marketing and all of that stuff, I really want to actually pick your brain a little bit on what you think makes a fantastic marketer in 2024. Now, I know obviously marketers have like this perfect balance of being creative and technologically adept and customer centric, some of the things that we kind of just discussed as well. Um, but I wonder, Stephanie, beyond these common traits, even like emotional intelligence and stuff like that, beyond these things that are quite obvious to know that a great marketer should have, what do you think really sets a good marketer apart from a really great marketer these days?
I would give you my guess in terms of what it could be, because, yeah, to your exact point, there's this big element of how creative can you be as a marketer, and you have so many different platforms and media channels to do that these days. And then you have the other end of the spectrum, which is how analytical can you be as a marketer, and there's so much data and being able to convert all of that into figures that the finance team can understand, so that your budget's protected. Like, there's so much that's going on today. I did do a doctorate in business with a focus on marketing. And when I talk about my findings with the industry or anybody who wants to listen, I really just take it back to like comms 101, and just to remind marketers that it's about the consumer. It's all about how media and advertising makes people feel. And so if we just remember, there's a process when people are exposed to messaging. It's encoding when you're exposed, and decoding, which is how it makes you feel. And does it tap into previous experiences that you've had as a person or with the brand that's being advertised? There's such a complex process into how people will respond to an ad. And I think that's what a great marketer is going to be keeping top of mind in everything that they do. Because how people feel about the medium that is being used to convey the message they're exposed to, that has an effect on the actual ad itself and how people feel about the ad. So if people are less trusting of a channel, that's going to be reflected by the brand, right? We talk about brand safety. There's an element of that there. Traditional media, and I've got to give a little flex to out-of-home media, it's in the real world, right? So people tend to trust it more. And that can be reflected then on how they feel about the brand. So there's so much going on there. And yeah, going back to psychology a little bit, the art of communications, that's I don't think we talk about that enough in the space.
No, exactly. No, I have to agree with you. I don't think we do talk about that enough. I mean, it's when you look at some people that really are, say, for instance, like influencers in marketing, right? They kind of jot off these like typical things of like, yes, okay, you have to be customer centric. You have to, be able to relate to people and all of that. But I don't feel like we're really going deep enough, to be honest with you, because yes, it's one thing to say you have to be relatable and know how to relate to people and play with their emotion, or not play with their emotions, but actually, I just had a guest, Luke Matthews, where he said that great marketers are all master manipulators, which was quite a controversial thing to say. But, I think maybe at its core, it is kind of like that. Maybe he's like one of the only ones that actually is saying that out loud. But yes, I think that if you take away how ugly that sounds, at its core, that is what it is, right? We're trying to influence people to think or feel a certain way about our product or service.
Definitely.
And so my point is, yeah. And my point is, I don't feel like we're talking deep enough about how to actually achieve that. You know, like if you're, say, for instance, I was a beginner marketer and I'm asking you, Stephanie, how do I actually tap into my audience? How can I relate to them and give them what they want, but also still sell them what I'm trying to sell them?
Yeah, it's a very complex web to navigate, and some of it goes back to the art of the sell and being a good salesperson. It's understanding people, so the same thing applies to marketing.
Mm-hmm.
And I empathize with, say, if you're a media buyer, right? You only have so much time in a day to figure out all the different types of media, and again, you're bringing the stats and the analyses together, and then you're also adding the creative and all the negotiations, and like that is a heck of a lot. So to then add that additional layer and really get into the psychology, it's a big task. And certainly when people have only a limited amount of time to do their jobs and they want to do a good job, I always refer to that idea of, nobody got fired for buying TV. And then I question that. I'm like, in these days, maybe you should be if you're buying linear television. I don't know. Sometimes it's great, but we can't stick to the status quo because it's safe in today's environment. So finding, whether you're on the brand side or you're on an agency side, wherever you are situated as a marketer, finding a space where you are encouraged to take some of those risks and call out a challenge quo that you think should be changed. I think that's something that executives should be paying attention to in terms of how to foster that, because sometimes a good bet on something is just not going to work out, but it's valuable because you have learned. And sometimes a good bet that there's nothing in the data indicating potentially that it could be good, you just strike gold. So navigating that too is decisions can't just be driven by data and insights in the marketing landscape, nor can they just be driven by, if you're a creative and you just want to do, like, you still have to listen a little bit sometimes to what you're being told. So it's an art.
Do you think that it's like a God-given talent, or do you think that people can actually learn how can I put this? Like connect their left and their right brain, because that's what it sounds like to me. Like you really need to be active on both your left and right brain sensors to be able to be a really good marketer, because on one side you have this analytical way of thinking and the other side is like this truly creative way of thinking. So that, yeah, my question again, do you think that this is like a God-given talent, or can people learn this? And if so, how can they work on both of those things simultaneously?
I think people can learn just about anything if they want to, right? So that shouldn't deter anyone. But when it comes to having those natural talents, some people just are inherently creative, and some people just are inherently, they feel they thrive in numbers, for example. That's why it's nice to have a team. And
Yeah.
I always tell, in a group setting, we all rely on each other to bring something to the table. And it goes back to communicating. So if you have a bunch of people in a group that each have a talent that you need, the only thing stopping that from being an amazing success is the ability to communicate.
Exactly. Yeah, 100%. I wonder, Stephanie, what are the most surprising qualities that we don't really talk about that great marketers have, do you think?
Well, yeah, this one wouldn't be surprising per se, but being curious. Again, I'm a big fan of just, poking under rocks and figuring out, what the world should look like. So curiosity, but that one is, people probably would imagine that comes with being a marketer. Confidence and bravery, to me, would be very important today. Feedback from everyone, internally, externally, and particularly clients or potential clients, is the best thing ever for a marketer. You're always craving feedback from clients to do what you do better and improve.
Okay. So just shifting the conversation a little bit now, Stephanie. I know that, trends in marketing, they shift constantly. Okay. And it's like every single day is something new, like one day is long form content and then the next it's short form. And now we've got AI in the mix and it's all over the place. And I know that this can be really confusing to try and keep up with, okay, what's in now? Am I doing the right thing? So I'm wondering, how can marketers not only keep up with it and see what's happening and where they should pivot their strategies to these days, but actually anticipate what the next big thing will be for them?
Great question. Um, I would say, going back to the idea about confidence, having the confidence to focus on your strategy and your plan is really important here, because things do change every day and new tech will be available every day. The number of companies that are out there that are offering to solve your problems, that's going to evolve every day. So if you get distracted by all these different choices and think that every new thing is something that you need to adapt to, that at the end of the day, you probably won't have much to show for it. So really understanding, and it's funny, like, again, going back to the tech side, I'm naturally a Luddite. I have very few apps on my phone unless they provide extreme use and value. And so because of that, I tend to question whatever might be new and say, okay, what's the use case here for me, for my company? So for marketers to be doing the same thing and just being very particular about, okay, this is new and I'm aware of it, but how does it help me? Otherwise, we just don't need it right now. You can have the confidence to say something like that. Just stick to your plan, and even put AI out. Like, everybody's talking about it. It's ultimately just something that can hopefully make things more efficient, right? However you're planning on using it, but make sure that dollars that you're investing in AI or in data or whatever it is will have utility to what your needs are. And that's, again, where you have to rely on, how do you predict what's coming? Rely on your team, rely on the folks that are in IT and tech and product and whatever it might be. Rely on your client feedback in terms of what they need, if they need expediency, if they need, different options. Those inform how to put together either a marketing plan or what tools to be using to do so.
Exactly. Do you have any resources, like suggestions that people can follow in case they want it, like newsletters or something like that, that you follow yourself, to help you sort of navigate this?
Okay, so there's two extremes here. On one side, when it comes to our space, Ad Exchanger, DigiDay, Adweek, those are some of the publications that I follow, and I receive their newsletters. So that helps me to stay on top of things. I also follow certain business publications and newsletters. Like Seeking Alpha is one, just for me to understand what's going on in the stock market. And then on the flip side, like, I get newsletters and information from, philosophy and science type publications. And that sates personal interests of me just being a huge nerd, and like, I enjoy reading about space and physics. But it's funny because from understanding what's going on in those worlds, sometimes I can even take anecdotes about a process that was implemented or something that was found that's kind of cool, and I can input them into a presentation that I'm giving at an event somewhere in the world, or a talk with my team. And so for me, I guess that's the puzzle pieces. I just like getting data from everywhere and figuring out how it might go together.
I wonder, Stephanie, just one of the last things on this topic of like being a great marketer and stuff. What would you say are the biggest challenges that marketers are facing currently, but is afraid of talking about right now within the industry? And why is that? And why should we be talking about that more?
I can be I'm just going to put it out there. I heard the term brand formance a couple months ago, and I was like, now we've crossed the line, because we had such a big pendulum swing towards performance marketing, which I understand because it's an effective way to validate the dollars that you're spending on your marketing efforts. But what's forgotten there, and again, I can speak to my out of home experience because out of home has largely been seen as a brand medium. Even though we can measure it full funnel and we can measure how it contributes to performance, it can get excluded from performance marketing campaigns. And it goes back to upper funnel metrics. The branding side of things have a direct positive correlation with lower funnel metrics. So you kind of always have to be thinking about both at once. And I understand why there are different tactics taken if you're swinging more towards brand or performance. But in general, as a marketer, you have to consider the impact that they have on each other. And so when I heard brand formance, I was like, okay, that's just marketing. We don't need a new term for that. It exists and it's called marketing. And I think some of that conversation has to come back in the space about I'm seeing more dollars moving to the brand side of things again, which is wonderful from a creative perspective and from that branding perspective that people really attach onto. So that is a big one for me. And in addition, with just the proliferation of ways to reach consumers these days, I often find myself thinking about, back in the day when Budweiser, for example, would do like those TV commercials, the WhatsApp and all of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Kids go to school the next day saying that, and it just becomes part of the culture and the zeitgeist, and people can share a moment. Or I'm up in Canada, Molson Canadian, I am Canadian commercial had a very similar effect. So I find myself thinking, okay, how can we do that in today's world? Where consumers are fragmented, how do we put that zeitgeist together in an omni-channel campaign? And that, again, it goes back to the fun of marketing, the understanding your consumer in a way of how are they going to relate to this message. And so I'd like to see more of those types of conversations.
Okay, I just to add to that, I have to say that those like 90s, even 80s, some 80s, but like 90s, early 2000s ads were the bomb. Like there's some of them that I still remember to this day. And it takes a really special ad these days to really make me be like, okay, I remember that ad. There was just something about it. Maybe it was the colors, or maybe it was just because we were young and all of that. But I love that. I love that you're thinking about like really integrating that, like you say, zeitgeist back into it, because it was a complete culture. I mean, ads was something we used to quote when we were kids. I remember that. I have like a flash of memories coming back to me right now. It's insane.
And it makes you
Um,
feel good, right? Like I'm thinking
yeah.
about it now too. NSYNC did one with Chili's for baby back ribs. I don't
Oh
know if
my word. Yes.
and maybe it's, we talk a lot, regardless of industry, about that 90s nostalgia. People are dressing like it. So there's something that people are craving about that time. And maybe it goes hand in hand with how we market to them as well. Like clearly people are asking for that. They want these types of feelings. And as marketers, I'm convinced we can bring that to people.
I am going to be looking out at your next ads for that for sure. Do you know what I think it is? I almost feel like people being nostalgic for the 90s is like it was simpler times, but it was also before the internet was like a big thing. So I almost wonder if people are too locked in or chronically online, as the kids say these days, and they're kind of like wanting to get back to that. I mean, ads and stuff from when I was a kid used to have like skateboarding or just skating and, like Mountain Dew ads. That's coming back to me now. Anyway, it was kind of like this nostalgic, sort of simpler time when we weren't putting up airs online and stuff like that. There wasn't this pressure to be anything other than yourself. And I think maybe that is something that people are craving now.
I know it's super relevant because marketers have to make decisions too about celebrity endorsements or influencers and the creator economy and all of that. And I've given that a lot of thought too. I have LinkedIn I'm on Facebook, to remember people's birthdays. But other than that, I don't really have social media. I have an Instagram burner account if necessary. And that's a personal decision just by knowing myself and my interests and what I want to take in from the world and put out to it. But I do think that there is an element of choice for people these days about who they want to not necessarily emulate, but follow and potentially be influenced by. So instead of a marketer just saying, here's the celebrity or the model that we think aligns with our brand and that you then need to want to be like, brands have this option to align themselves with all different types of people from different ways of life. And I think it gives people a much wider variety of ways that they can express themselves. And I don't know, I think it's pretty important.
Of course it is. I mean, if you're going to want to expand your audience up, if you think about it, if you want to expand your audience, and if you're a really amazing brand, let's take, say, for instance, like L'Oreal, that's a long-standing brand. I mean, women from all walks of life and even men from all walks of life, it doesn't matter if you're a gothic person or a preppy girl or whatever, everybody knows L'Oreal and a lot of people buy L'Oreal, right? Like it appeals to everybody. And I think maybe that's not the best let's say Dove. That's a better example, I think, for instance, because that really, like, they have the whole like beauty is in everything type campaign that they always run, right? So I think that's a good way of looking at it, is that you're touching different bases with your marketing and you're appealing to different people and being like, hey, our product is for everybody. And you can see that through the people that are endorsing it type thing.
I love that you mentioned Dove as well, because that's one example of a brand that I'm loyal to because my mom was loyal to and her mom is loyal to. And that's another topic that fascinates me in marketing in general, is brand loyalty because of familial influences.
100%. Like my mom, for instance, okay, this is a bit more fancy, but my mom uses Mugler's Angel perfume. And I mean, ever since I was a child, she's been using that perfume. And it's so funny because now that I'm grown up, I also use Mugler, not the Angel one, but I also use Mugler. So it's funny how exactly like things that our parents were loyal to, we still kind of do that. Like I remember there was this soap, this like green block of soap that my parents used to use when they were children, that their parents had used. And I mean, it didn't smell particularly good. It was sort of like this cheapy kind of gigantic block of soap, but they still used it. It wasn't super fancy. It wasn't anything big, but because they trusted the product, because their parents used it and it worked for them when they were kids, they used it well into adulthood as well. It's a very interesting topic for sure.
Oh, definitely. I'm a product of that. Most things, like my parents, their watches on a daily basis, they'll wear Movado. So my first watch, was Movado, and everything from the cars they drive, the products they use. When I was young, I used to see them in shirts with like an alligator or crocodile, right? And I didn't know what it was. But then as I got older, I knew it was Lacoste. It's one of my favorite brands. So yeah, that's definitely something to tap into. But I think if we were to summarize a lot of what we've been speaking about, again, going back to how it makes a consumer feel, and maybe we should even remove the term consumer, how it makes a person feel. And that's driven by, again, there's a creative element, and then there's all of the data potentially. If you work in the automobile industry, I'd be curious to understand what that looks like.
That is a very interesting one. I would be curious to see what that looks like too, because again, you also just mentioned that I feel the same way. I'm loyal to car brands that my parents have had.
Yeah.
I never thought about it like that. So just shifting the conversation again now a little bit, Stephanie, I want to get your insights, because I know that you work for Billups, right? Or you work with Billups. And I want to know, from your point of view, working with an agency, what are the biggest mistakes that you've seen businesses make when hiring an agency?
Great question. There is and I would love to attribute this, but I came across it in, again, my academic studies. There's a quote by someone who said that, brands hire agencies to build their brand and then fire them for not delivering on ROI or sales or whatever it might be. And that is, again, communication. So being very direct about, okay, this is what we need. And even sometimes a marketer doesn't exactly know what they need, but putting that out there, that's where an agency can help. And sometimes it really is a matter of, when you bring on an agency, do you want them to just do what you're saying, and because they're activating and they're doing, or do you want them to challenge you sometimes if they think that maybe what you're saying could be dealt with in a different way or approached in a different way? So there's a lot of that I believe should be discussed right from the get-go in terms of what are the expectations of the agency partner. And I've been on the tech side. I was at Yahoo. I've been on the publisher side and out of home. And so being at an agency, it really, like, the clarity, that's what is going to develop a very strong partnership.
So then a follow-up to that is, say for instance, a business is shopping around for agencies to help them with something like their marketing, right? What would you say are the key questions that they need to be asking agencies to make sure that it's a perfect fit for them?
I would say one of the biggest is just to truly ask for a comparison between some of the other competitors or agencies that the marketer is considering. It's interesting to see how, because we can go on anybody's website or look at, reviews and get an understanding of what the competitive advantage might be, but to hear it directly from an agency does help. Very much understanding what is unique that the agency is going to bring to the table, how they operate. These are questions, definitely. And I really do believe in the importance of having some sort of relationship management process or program in place. And that can even apply to, the pitching stage. Is really, this is how we like to work at our company. What does it look like at your company? And do you have the flexibility to adapt to our desires? So I would just put that right out there. Here are expectations.
Mm-hmm. I'm thinking now, actually, I think you could provide me with a good example for this. Have you seen a really amazing campaign, branding, marketing strategy, whatever the case may be, where a client and the marketing agency's goals were just so in line and led to something incredible and amazing and stands the test of time, like that kind of thing? Can you give me an example of when that happened? Because I feel like that could really illustrate how important it is for a business or a client to really align on the same goals, or with an agency to align on the same goals as a business or client when it comes to their marketing.
I mean, I could say that for so many different campaigns that I just joined Billups in September, but that I've seen rolled out since that time. And I'm not just saying that to toot the company's horn. I say it because Billups is very clear. We're an out-of-home media agency, and we have proprietary technology that is able to measure attention and attention mapping with the creative, as well as the positioning of the face, whether it's static or digital. And we can look at everything from brand sentiment to footfall, website conversions. Like, we're very clear when we go in, this is what we can offer in terms of how we buy your media across the world, because we are doing those international campaigns that are so exciting. And this is how we measure it across the world. And so with that type of alignment, you can have campaigns. There's one that is top of mind because it was at a Canadian Awards ceremony a couple weeks ago. We acquired an agency called Out of Home Labs in October of last year. And they worked on a campaign for an alcohol brand that was aligning itself with a hockey team in Canada. And it was everything from doing this out-of-home takeover between the metro station, the subway station, and the arena, like knowing traffic and how busy and how excited fans are going to be. There was an element of targeting a retailer that was involved in this campaign, selling products that were part of the promotion. Screens within 1 kilometer of those retailers were going to be running ads. And then we measured footfall, right? And footfall, of course, there was an uptick. And then there was an element too of dynamic creative optimization on certain screens, where if the hockey team was in the lead or they scored a goal that was going to get them into the lead, certain tailored creative would play. And there were just so many parts of this campaign that came together because we and the client knew exactly what we would be able to do, right? So it can be as complex as you want it to be, but it's very simple if you're just clear, like, okay, what are your goals? Because this is everything that we can do in unison to meet them.
Yeah, sometimes I feel like the simpler strategies or more straightforward strategies oftentimes are the best, to be honest. I think there's something to be said for that for sure. Now, Stephanie, just sort of closing off on this topic for now, I just have one more question here. From your experience, what do you think are the top things or most important things that businesses or clients need to be careful of when hiring an agency?
One is making sure that there's a culture fit. And this is how Billups is, in the time that I've been with the company, it's a big component of how businesses that have been acquired have been evaluated. So the Billups is acquired, I mentioned the Canadian out-of-home agency in Belgium, an out-of-home agency in Malaysia, an out-of-home agency in Australia and New Zealand, all in less than a year. And the integration has been pretty seamless because these agencies have leaders and teams that conduct business in the same way that we do. So the culture fit is very much aligned. Everybody's passionate about out of home. We're cheering for the underdog. We care about our clients. We want to deliver amazing and change the world. That's actually our motto. And so when a marketer is looking to team up with an agency, make sure that these are they people that you want to work with? And again, I know that sounds so simple, but it's fundamental to building trust. And that's what a relationship is all about. So yeah, you can get to the business models, and of which there are many when you're engaging an agency these days, and different tech elements that they can bring to the table. But fundamentally, it's the question of, okay, would I want to work with these people on a daily basis? And how will we all behave if there's an issue or a challenge that we need to iron out in a short amount of time? Because that always comes up. So that's, I think, the secret sauce to a good partnership.
Just going a little bit deeper on that, I really like what you're saying, that you need to have that cultural fit, which I agree with you. But for a company or a client that needs to sort of make, I don't want to say a snap decision, because hopefully nobody makes a snap decision on who they're getting to do their branding and marketing, right? But I'm just wondering, like, what does that process look like from the client's point of view? Like, how long does it take for them? What do they need to really do to identify these types of things from an agency? What are the things that a client can look at to identify these people are trustworthy?
So one is, and I'll just put it out there in terms of manufacturing. When I did my doctoral thesis, I had to do the stats myself, which was a nightmare for me because that was my least favorite part of it. But what it taught me in analyzing all the data is like, yeah, obviously there are lots of different ways, and all could have methodologies that, could be totally accurate to take data and turn it into a variety of different stories. And so the question always becomes, okay, what is the most truthful and valid way to arrive at a result here? And when Billups CTO and I were talking about a methodology for how we approach measurement, at first he was saying, because marketing rolls into me, and he was like, yeah, this is just exactly how we do it. And I was like, are you sure that we should be sharing everything with, the world? Is that not something that we want to keep a little bit closer? And he goes, no, because our team is going to approach this in the most factual, truthful way. And that's how we deliver value. And I was so proud at that moment to work with Billups because of this approach. And to your point, that could potentially be difficult to discern in early stages of a conversation. But sometimes it's as simple as, and I've had this recently, a brand approached one agency and the agency delivered, a plan. And then they approached us and we delivered a plan, and just the difference in terms of what they received, pricing, quality, idea, strategy, was enough for them to say, okay, we're going to go with you. So yeah, make sure that you have a couple choices to compare between, have those intro conversations, have people pitch, but then also see what they can do. And there is a dialogue in the space about, do you pay agencies for that part of a pitch? And I do think that depending on the budget that you're going to be spending, it can be worth it.
Yeah, 100%. I always say that the proof is in the proposal with things like that, for sure.
I love that.
Stephanie, I'm going to wrap up with you now, but I just have one more question for you. If you could make one marketing tactic illegal, what would it be and why?
It would be the word utilize. Like, that is, people have pet peeves. That's my pet peeve when I see, especially in, ad tech press releases, when I see the word utilize, I'm like, what's wrong? What happened to use? And can we bring that back?
Leveraging.
Yes. Or innovative, cutting edge,
dynamic.
Yeah, 100%. So just, there's that, show me how it is this, instead of using that word. So utilize is very particular example of that. But in general, just spell it out, because particularly in the data space or the tech space, sometimes it's hard on someone's website to even understand what exactly it is that they do. So if you're claiming that you do something different, just make it clear.
Stephanie, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been really, really nice. I've really enjoyed this. Some really valuable insights. Thank you.
For me too. And if you edit it out, for everyone listening, there was a butterfly in the unit during this podcast. So thank you for being very professional about that too.
Of course. Yeah, no, absolutely. Just also for everybody listening, I would have kept the butterfly in had we actually seen the butterfly on camera, but no, we didn't. But there was one. So hopefully this is a good sign for this episode, for sure.
Totally. Good luck for us and everyone listening.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Stephanie. And that's a wrap on our episode with Dr. Stephanie Gutnik. If your project could benefit from a top-tier agency's expertise, look no further than DesignRush.com/marketplace. Our carefully curated selection of agencies is equipped to help you navigate the digital world, from web design to marketing, to bring your vision to life. Remember to like and subscribe for more engaging chats with industry leaders. Again, I'm your host, Vianca Mayer. Stay curious and join us for the next episode.